Welcome to people who survived the impossible. Some people survive things they were never supposed to survive. A plane explodes in the sky. A girl falls into the Amazon rainforest. A boat sinks to the bottom of the ocean. A man gets trapped alone in a canyon. A woman freezes under ice. And a fisherman disappears into the Pacific for more than a year. In almost every one of these stories, survival should have been impossible. But somehow, one tiny detail changed everything. A seatbelt, a river, pocket of air, a decision, a doctor who refused to give up. These are the people who survived the impossible. The woman who fell from the sky. On January 26, 1972, Vesna Vulovic was working as a flight attendant on a Yugoslav passenger plane. She was 22 years old. The plane was flying over Czechoslovakia when an explosion tore through the aircraft in mid-air. The plane broke apart thousands of feet above the ground. Everyone on board should have died. And almost everyone did. But Vesna was trapped inside part of the wreckage as it fell through the freezing sky. She had no parachute, no control, no way to save herself. She fell more than 30,000 feet before the wreckage crashed into a snowy hillside. When rescuers reached the crash site, they expected to find no survivors. But Vesna was still alive. She had a fractured skull, broken legs, broken vertebrae, and serious internal injuries. Doctors did not expect her to recover, but she did. Months later, Vesna learned to walk again. She would limp for the rest of her life, but she had survived one of the highest falls in history without a parachute. The sky dropped her from a height no human body should survive. And somehow she woke up. The girl who walked out of the Amazon. On Christmas Eve, 1971, 17-year-old Julianne Koepke boarded a flight in Peru with her mother. They were trying to get home for Christmas. The plane flew into a violent thunderstorm over the Amazon rainforest. Then lightning struck the aircraft. The plane began breaking apart in the sky. Julianne was still strapped into her seat when she was thrown out of the plane. For a moment, she was falling through the clouds. Then everything went black. When she opened her eyes, she was on the jungle floor. The plane was gone. Her mother was gone. Everyone was gone. Julianne was alone in the Amazon with a broken collarbone, a deep cut on her arm, an injured eye, and only one shoe. Most people would have stayed near the crash site and waited for help. But Julianne knew something important. Her parents were scientists, and she had grown up around the rainforest. She remembered one rule. If you are lost in the jungle, follow water. Small streams lead to bigger streams. Bigger streams lead to rivers. And rivers lead to people. So Julianne started walking. For days, she moved through the rainforest with almost no food. Her wounds became infected. Insects crawled into the cut on her arm. But she kept following the water. After 11 days, she found a small hut used by lumbermen. When the men returned, they found a teenage girl standing in the jungle, injured, exhausted, and somehow alive. The crash did not kill her. The jungle did not kill her. And the river led her home. The man at the bottom of the ocean. On May 26, 2013, Harrison O'Keefe was working as a cook on a tugboat off the coast of Nigeria. In the middle of the night, the boat capsized and sank. The entire vessel flipped upside down and dropped to the bottom of the ocean, around 100 feet underwater. 11 crew members died. Harrison should have died with them. But as water rushed through the boat, he managed to find a small pocket of air inside the wreck. He was trapped in total darkness. The boat was upside down. The water was freezing. He had no food, almost no drinking water, and no way to know if anyone was coming. The worst part was that the divers who came down were not looking for survivors. They were looking for bodies. For nearly 60 hours, Harrison sat in that tiny air pocket, praying and waiting. The oxygen was running out. The water kept rising. Then a diver entered the wreck. He reached into the darkness, expecting to find a body. And suddenly a hand grabbed him. The diver froze, because the man he thought was dead was still alive. Harrison had survived almost 3 days at the bottom of the ocean. When they brought him out, he had to be carefully decompressed so the pressure change would not kill him. The ocean swallowed the boat. But one small bubble of air kept him alive. The man trapped by a boulder. On April 26, 2003, Aaron Ralston went hiking alone in Blue John Canyon, Utah. He was experienced, confident, and used to being outdoors. But he made one mistake. He did not tell anyone exactly where he was going. While climbing through a narrow canyon, Aaron accidentally dislodged a large boulder. The rock fell, slammed into his arm, and pinned his right hand against the canyon wall. At first, Aaron thought he could pull himself free. He couldn't. He tried pushing the boulder. It did not move. He tried chipping at it. Nothing worked. The rock weighed hundreds of pounds. He had no phone signal, no one nearby, and no one knew where to search. For days, Aaron rationed his water. He recorded goodbye messages for his family. He carved his name into the canyon wall. Eventually, he realized the truth. Nobody was coming in time. There was only one way out. Using a cheap multi-tool, Aaron broke the bones in his trapped arm and cut himself free. Then he still had to escape the canyon. He climbed down, walked for miles, and finally found help. Most people would have died waiting for a miracle. Erin became the miracle. The woman frozen under ice. In 1999, Anna Begenholm was skiing in Norway with friends. She was a doctor, so she understood the human body. But that day, her own body was pushed past every normal limit. Anna lost control while skiing and slid headfirst onto a frozen stream. The ice broke. She fell through. The current pulled her underneath. Her body became trapped under the ice. Only her skis and legs were visible above the surface. Her friends rushed to help, but they could not pull her out. Anna found a small pocket of air under the ice and kept breathing for as long as she could. But the water was freezing. Her body temperature dropped fast. After about 40 minutes, her heart stopped. By the time rescuers finally cut her out, she had been trapped in the freezing water for around 80 minutes. She had no pulse. She was not breathing. To everyone around her, she looked dead. But at the hospital, doctors followed one rule about extreme cold. You are not dead until you are warm and dead. They connected Anna to a machine that warmed her blood outside her body and pumped it back in. For hours, doctors worked on her. Then her heart started beating again. 10 days later, Anna woke up. The cold almost killed her. But strangely, the cold also helped protect her brain. She had been frozen close to death, and then brought back. The fisherman who disappeared for 438 days. In November 2012, Jose Salvador Alvarenga left the coast of Mexico on a small fishing boat. It was supposed to be a normal fishing trip. Then a storm hit. The motor failed. The radio stopped working, and the current pulled the boat out into the Pacific Ocean. At first, he probably thought rescue would come. But days passed, then weeks, then months. To survive, Jose caught fish with his bare hands. He ate raw birds. He ate turtles. He drank rainwater when he could collect it. His fishing partner could not survive the conditions and eventually died. Jose was alone. He saw ships in the distance, but none of them saw him. He had no engine, no map, and no way to steer home. Just endless ocean in every direction. After more than a year at sea, Jose saw land. It was a tiny island in the Marshall Islands, thousands of miles from where he had started. He jumped from the boat and swam to shore. 2 locals found him weak, bearded, and barely able to speak. He had been adrift for 438 days. People doubted the story at first because it sounded impossible. But the boat, the currents, the distance, and the timeline all matched. Jose had crossed the Pacific by accident. And somehow he lived. Final lesson. Every survival story sounds impossible in a different way. A woman falling from the sky. A girl walking out of the Amazon. A cook trapped at the bottom of the ocean. A hiker cutting himself free from a canyon. A skier frozen under ice. A fisherman drifting across the Pacific. None of these people should have survived. But somehow they did. Sometimes survival is luck. Sometimes it is knowledge. Sometimes it is stubbornness. And sometimes it is one tiny detail that changes everything. A seatbelt. A river. An air pocket. A hard decision. A doctor who refuses to stop. That is what makes these stories so strange. They are not just stories about people escaping death. They are stories about how close death can get. And still miss. If you want more strange true stories like this, make sure to subscribe and leave your suggestions for the next video in the comments.